unprecedented. The US has released some economic data. It was quite gloomy. The US economy has certainly been struggling, and it saw the prices fall as sharply as they have done since 1991. But that being said, despite that fall, it's still a very constructive period. Oil has been expensive. With the unrest in Libya, a key OPEC member, it looks to remain expensive. It's hard to see a world where we are going to see consistently sub 100 oil, at least with what we know now in the short term.
Let's talk about Africa and the importance of Africa as an oil producer. Recently, we've seen the likes of China coming into Africa. I hear 60% in 2009 of Africa's exports to China was oil. So obviously we're becoming a key producer, and in terms of proven reserves, I hear 59 billion in 1989. It's now about 100, well over 100. So Africa might be a key oil producer going forward. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't think it's a question, really. It is. Africa is a key oil producer. Africa will continue to be a key oil producer. One of the things that really works well, if I may use the phrase for Africa, is that China is the growing economy. Some analysts believe that China will be a bigger economy than the US by as soon as 2016. Even if it isn't that soon, it will happen, unquestionably. And China has focused on Africa, on the Gulf of Guinea states, as key strategic partners. China politically has some concerns over the Middle East. They have concern of vesting so much power with the Middle East. In a lot of ways, China looks at the Middle East as an American area, an area of immense American influence, and they're uncomfortable with that. They look to Africa, they look to Angola, they look here to Nigeria, they feel comfortable with it, and they want to build strategic partnerships here in Africa. Africa has been welcoming of that, understandably so. So Africa is poised incredibly well. You mentioned the reserves. Yes, they're there. They're proven. They're growing. Output's growing. The country's more stable. The area's been more stable. It looks good. And of course, the crude that Africa has, the crude that Nigeria in particular has, is very good quality, a lot of it. Very light, very sweet. It produces good light-end products, gasolines, petrols, naphthas, the things that people want to refine, the things that people want. Not only is that good, but it's also in stark contrast to what the Saudi Arabian, Middle Eastern oil is. That's very sour, very heavy, not so good at making those light products. Africa is in a, not a quite a unique, but a very good position, and it looks very, very, very well positioned to take advantage of the growth in Chinese economy.
Of course, with that advantage, let's talk about the opportunities. The opportunities you see for Africa, especially the local investors. We're hearing, for instance, that more oil majors seem to be divesting, particularly from downstream.
Yep.
And for a country like Nigeria, for instance, we see that the downstream sector is not very developed in terms of exports, for instance. Talk about the opportunities you see for African producers in a global context.
There are a lot. There are a lot of opportunities. You're absolutely right to say a lot of the oil majors who have traditionally been very involved in the downstream sector are moving out. They're divesting, they're looking at other opportunities. They themselves are looking east where they feel they can make more money. And what we've seen is more indigenous growth. Indigenous African companies growing, taking over those businesses. There is a lot of expertise indigenously in Africa to exploit those opportunities, that's for sure, but it isn't easy. One of the big problems or challenges, I would say, for Africa, for Nigeria particularly right now, is a lack of refining. Africa, Nigeria produces immense qualities and quantities of crude oil, but it exports that oil, but it's forced to re-import refined product rather than producing refined products here. And it's a difficult economic situation to be in. And really one of the bigger opportunities right now in Africa, and there are projects slated to address this, is to bring refining here to make it efficient and strong and to start supplying oil. Currently, Nigeria is reliant. 90% of the oil, the gasoline that is burnt on the streets of Nigeria is imported, is European, some of it's from the Mediterranean. It isn't local. That's a big challenge.
Let's talk about the emerging and new producers. Let's say I have Ghana, Kenya, Mozambique, Niger, Sierra Leone, Somalia, Tanzania, and of course Uganda here. By June they should be producing. What are the dynamics you see evolving in terms of production in Africa? Do you think we will see all these countries, for instance, come on stream?
Yes, I do. The high cost of oil currently, and the likely persistent high cost of oil, gives opportunities. One of the things that Africa has surprised a lot of analysts with is the ability to bring oil to market quickly from new fields. Oil is a finite commodity. There's a certain amount under the ground, and old fields decline. Old fields run out of oil at some point. What Africa has done exceptionally well has been able to exploit new fields, bring things through in less than a year in some places. Fields like the Jubilee field, taken less than a year to bring good quantities stably, reliably to market. That's very impressive. If they can keep that up, and every indication is that they can, then lots of companies come in. A high price of oil, as the old saying goes, there's no cure for high prices like high prices, and that's because it enables people to produce, to exploit, to develop. What we see now with a rampant Chinese economy and demand growing. In 2008, when the economies around the world stumbled, even the Chinese economy, it looked bleak, but now the demand projections for oil are strong. We're growing, oil is needed. It's a great time to be producing oil, and it again fits Africa very well.